Hey everyone, it's Kitetails, and welcome to my review for Lies of P, which is probably my favorite game that has come out this year. It just hit so many marks for me with the setting, the story, the environment, the characters, the gameplay. It was a delight from start to finish, despite the insane difficulty, which I will get into in its own designated section later on in this video. So I honestly didn't know what to expect from this game because it was being advertised as like Dark Souls, but with Pinocchio. And I'm not really the best at those games. I have to say how surprised I was by how much I adored this game. But I knew I was going to like it very early on from the moment I watched the opening credits with the puppets and the flashback and their rebelling and crushing their oppressors. I thought, oh my gosh, this game is made for me. It has this beautiful Art Deco, turn of the century, World's Fair, Victorian dystopia vibe. And it reminded me a lot of BioShock, which I absolutely love that series. Lies of P has a gramophone and you can play records on it. And the records look like the style of Mucha. I mean, for goodness sake, this game is my vibe to a T. So I just wanted to share my thoughts after having beaten it and talk about how much I loved it and why it is such a great game, and hopefully encourage someone out there to give it a shot if they've been eyeing it and to go for it, because I think everyone should try this game for themselves, especially if this is your style and you like these kind of games. Lies of P is inspired by the old Italian fairy tale of Pinocchio, and you play as the character known as Geppetto's puppet.
You're the devil's puppet.
The game is set in the city of Krat, a metropolis of technology and wealth that is now in ruins after falling to a violent puppet rebellion, where puppets have seemingly lost their minds and set out to slaughter every living human resident in the city. The only safe hold left is the Krat Hotel, where the survivors have taken residence, hunkered down, in hopes that they will be saved when Geppetto, the creator of the puppets, and supposedly the mastermind behind all of this, arrives to put a stop to the puppet rebellion. You are set out to search for Geppetto and to clear out the berserk puppets along the way, as well as fighting off the human survivors who have, at this point, gone completely mad as well. The mystery you set out to solve is to find out who is really responsible for starting this violent puppet rebellion, and to figure out what is causing the mysterious petrification disease that is killing off the human residents of Krat. I really loved the story. It took a completely unforeseen turn at some point in the middle of the game, and I loved going along for the ride thinking, where the heck is this going? But it works so well, and it was so refreshing and nice to have a linear story with no loose ends, and it was clear to follow, and I felt like most of my questions were answered, yet there was still room for wanting more. And there were so many little side stories and side characters that you learn about through the little lore bits that are delivered as books, letters, and posters in the game. And it tells you so much more about Krat and the history of what has happened without the game needing to show you or explain it to you in long character dialogues. And it's all really succinct as well, which I especially appreciate because sometimes games can go overboard with the lore text. So it was just very refreshing that Lies of P was able to give so much story with so much effective brevity, which I think is a very difficult thing for a game to do. The story is divided into different chapters, which I thought was extremely charming considering this is based on a novel, and you travel to different locations and you level up and you upgrade your equipment using these machines called stargazers. And one thing that I loved that I thought was such a quality of life thing for the story that I just haven't really ever seen in another one of these types of games was that the stargazers would have an icon of an item or a character to talk to if there were updates to their quest at a different location, which for someone like me who can be very forgetful, it was such a nice detail to make sure that I didn't miss any important story updates. There were so many little references in this game, not only to the classic tale of Pinocchio, but references to other fairy tales. And there was one reference in particular that is definitely not a fairy tale, but it is clearly a reference to this character, and I still don't understand why it is here. It makes no sense. And if you have played this game, you know who these guys are supposed to be. It is so insanely random, but I loved it.
I am Master Vanini's major domo.
But overall, I just love the idea of taking this fairy tale about Pinocchio and all of the characters and creating this really unique world while still including lots of little elements from the original story. And whether or not you choose to lie or tell the truth ends up being a huge game mechanic that changes the ending you get. So you have to decide if you're going to be a good puppet or are you going to be a puppet who thinks for himself. But what really won me over personally was the beautiful environment and locations. There were a couple places that I was just like, yeah, I can see myself living here because I have a thing for 20th century shopping arcades and glassy Victorian interiors and cute European cities. Actually, I will tell you the exact moment I grasped at my heart and I thought, oh my gosh, they have an insight into my soul. I arrived at the art district, and what do I hear? I hear fascination. And not just fascination, but it's in French. And now I am in a sword fight in the middle of the art district with someone who's trying to kill me while the French version of fascination plays in the background. A game has not gotten me this much in a very long time. And I was so here for it. By then, I was like, here, put another ring on my finger.
Scream the requiem for me, if you would.
I really enjoyed the gameplay in Lies of P. It was so much fun, and I was hooked after the first boss fight. It just felt so good, and it felt like it clicked for me. I did have some problems with the dodging and parrying a bit, but that just might be user error because I'm not really great at those mechanics, but there were some fights that I absolutely had to use the parry mechanic to get past. And I appreciated how I was pushed into trying different playstyles constantly throughout the game. I loved the visual cue for staggering and then backstabbing because it helped me so much knowing where to stand in order to land a backstab. And it also helped me determine when I needed to unleash my special moves in order to down an enemy when that white stagger bar appeared. The system of melee weapons in Legion arms is so much fun because you have all these different combinations that you can create. You have several different Legion arms which have their own status effects and upgrades, and then you have an array of melee weapons that you can mix and match where you can swap the blades and the handles to create all kinds of different puppet killing abominations, and that allows you to mix and match the Fable arts as well. And usually when I play these games, I tend to never experiment with different weapons and I kind of just pick something that I like and I stick with it. But I was forced to play around and try all different kinds of combinations that were suited for each enemy and boss and figure out what I needed to do. So it was really fun for me to be forced to experiment in a way that I typically don't ever do. You make upgrades to your character using the P organ machine, and these will fall into the categories of defense, offense, guarding, parrying, upgrades to your pulse cells, which are your health files. And just a tip, I would probably unlock that section first because you will need those extra pulse cells. I loved the vast variety of enemies as well as all of their different designs, especially the puppets. Except for the clown puppets from hell, because holy cow, those guys were irritating. But overall, I loved the puppets. The gameplay was just so fun and satisfying. And for me, this is rare because I'm not the biggest fan of Souls-like combat, and I do struggle with it, and it does annoy me. But I got through this game by myself, which is a huge accomplishment because I had to play the entirety of Bloodborne with my husband. I had to play the entirety of Elden Ring with my husband. I felt like I've used him as my crutch. And this game, I was able to do it myself, and I felt so proud of myself. But now I need to talk about why I almost stopped playing this game. I need to tell you what drove me to such despair that I lowered myself into the gutter to leave this despondent emo post on Reddit about why I was giving up and why I was done with this game. So let's back up. The bosses. The bosses in this game are tough. When someone describes this as Dark Souls but with Pinocchio, that would be extremely accurate, if not for the fact that the bosses in Lies of P are so much more insane and difficult and frustrating. And this isn't just an opinion I have. The Lies of P community, there are numerous posts out there about how this is extremely more difficult than the Souls games are. But I was doing very well in this game up until a point, despite the fact that I don't like insanely difficult boss battles. They just frustrate me, and I just don't have the patience to sit through the same fight for over 2 hours for that sense of satisfaction. Difficult boss battles don't satisfy me. They just get to a point where they annoy me beyond what I can handle, and I throw in the towel. But in this game, I was able to get hit more than just a couple times and survive, which was my main annoyance with a lot of the Souls games, was that I'd like get hit twice, get stun locked, and die. So it was fun for me to be able to survive through these battles and try again. I was so proud of myself after I beat the first boss, because each time I died, I saw that I was learning and I was getting a little better and I was getting further each time. So I definitely enjoyed the boss fights in Lies of P way more than I enjoyed the boss fights in Elden Ring or Bloodborne. And the game has this amazing feature where you drop your ergo, which is the currency and a major plot item in the game. You drop it right outside the boss door if you die. So bless you, Round 8 Studio, developer of Lies of P. Thank you for letting me retrieve my ergo outside the boss door, because so many times I ended up grabbing it and heading back to the Stargazer to level up, or heading back to Krot Hotel to purchase a weapon upgrade, realizing, yeah, I'm not ready for that boss fight. But when I got to chapter 4, I could not beat that boss. It broke me. It broke my spirit, and I told my husband that I wasn't going to be able to finish this game. I said, I can't do it. This boss was so incredibly difficult, and nothing I was doing was working. I wasn't getting farther. I wasn't making progress. In fact, the more I played this boss, the more times I tried to beat him, the less far I was getting. I was actually regressing and getting worse. And I was so sad because I really loved the game. I loved the story. I really wanted to continue playing it, but it was too difficult for me, and I didn't have the skill to overcome it. So thankfully, my husband found a mod for me, and it's an easy mod. Okay, it makes the game easier. And I will post a link to that mod in the video description for anyone that ends up needing it. But that mod saved me. And apparently it was originally supposed to be a part of the game upon release. It was meant to have an easy mode that just didn't make it into the final version for whatever reason. So I'm really thankful that someone made that mod available for PC and Game Pass, which is where I played it, because I would have really missed out on completing this wonderful game because I just didn't have the will nor skill to keep trying this battle over and over again. So if you're like me and you appreciate a challenge, you like a good story, but you just don't need nor enjoy the brutal punishment of it, and it's not something you are going to get over, you can still play this game with a little help from this mod, and you will have just as much fun and enjoyment, and you will get just as much out of it, but without wanting to throw yourself off the top of the Krot Hotel. And if you're not like me and you love an extreme boss fight and a brutal butt smacking, then this is definitely the game for you, because it is extremely tough. And I don't know how this mod really affects my review, because I am convinced that I would not have been able to get through that boss and continue on with the game without this mod, because the bosses after that one are so much more intense. So I'm just not good at these games with the dodging and the parrying and the knowing when to block and attack. I've just never been great at them. So yeah, without this mod, the review might not be as high. So I really hope for the upcoming DLC and the sequel, whatever else comes out, I really hope that the developers do include a difficulty setting. Otherwise, I'll have to hit up the mod guy again. Without spoiling anything or showing you anything about the ending, I just need to say that the after credit scene in this game made me clutch my pearls because, oh my gosh, what this studio has in store next is going to be incredible. And I'm so stinking excited for it. I am here for this dark fairy tale universe. I am fully committed to this. And there is a feature in this game that you see very early on in which the puppet bosses are speaking to you, but you can't understand them just yet. But on your second playthrough, that is deciphered for you. And I think that is such a cool way to make New Game Plus have more importance on the subsequent playthroughs. So yeah, overall, the story, the ending, everything was just great and perfect. I loved it. I'm like foaming at the mouth in with how much I loved this game. I hope you enjoyed my review of Lies of P, and maybe it's convinced you to check out the game yourself because it really was such a fun and delightful game, and I think it has so much appeal to so many different people. It's accessible to everyone that likes these kind of games, but only because there is that mod option for the difficulty. I give it a 10 out of 10. Glowing review. I cannot wait to see what is next. I will be uploading some story videos from the game as well, so look forward to those. And a big shout out to my channel members. Thank you so much for your support. Doomsday Zen, James Flack, Twisted Bishop, Joey, Alexander Jojo, Dantakoi, Francisco Mena, Crod, Solomon, and Squally. You all are awesome. Thank you again. And if you, new person, would like to join my channel membership, you can sign up for on the link. For cookies and Halloween candy. All right, everyone. Until next time. Bye.